all accounts, Thomas Paine wasn't supposed to matter. He wasn't an American, he wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, but by the time he hit his mid-30s, he was mostly known for failing at everything he tried. Failed jobs, failed marriages, failed prospects. Then he came to America with a little more than a letter of introduction from Benjamin Franklin. And somehow, this failed corset maker from England picked up a pen and ended up changing the world. Now, while George Washington fought with muskets, cannons, and soldiers, Thomas Paine fought with words, and he won. His pamphlet, Common Sense, didn't just urge for independence, it lit the fuse. And when the revolution started running out of steam, Paine again gave America one more push with words that still echo today. These are the times that try men's souls. Thomas Paine proved you don't need an army to start a revolution, just a pen and the words at the right time. Welcome to our republic.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political band,
sailors and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not one small step for man.
Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
we pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Paine was born in 1737 in Thetford, England. His father was a Quaker stay maker, building the stiff frames used in corsets. Paine followed in that train, which, let's be honest, wasn't exactly destined for glory. He bounced between apprenticeships, jobs, and even tried his hand to tax collector, but he failed at that too. By his late 30s, he was broke, adrift, and almost out of options. Then he met Benjamin Franklin, who saw some spark in him and gave him a letter to take across the Atlantic. And in 1774, Paine landed in Philadelphia just as the colonies were about to explode. In January 1776, Paine unleashed a pamphlet called Common Sense, and it hit like a cannon blast. He didn't write it for elites. He didn't lace his arguments in Latin. He wrote in plain language that ordinary people could understand. He called monarchy unnatural, said America didn't need Britain, and that independence wasn't just a good idea, it was destiny. The pamphlet sold more than 100,000 copies in just a few months. That's staggering in an age before mass printing. I mean, farmers, shopkeepers, soldiers, everyone was reading it. And suddenly, what Congress had been too cautious to say out loud, people were shouting, independence now. But revolutions don't run on pamphlets alone. And by the end of 1776, morale was collapsing. Washington's army was cold, starving, and bleeding men by the day. It looked like the revolution might end before it actually truly began. And that's when Paine struck again. He began a series called American Crisis. Not one essay, but 16 separate pamphlets published over the course of the war. Each one aimed at a moment, each one designed to remind Americans what they were fighting for. The very first opened with these words, which became immortal, and we've all heard them. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in crisis, shrink from the service in their country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of men and women. Washington had those words read aloud to the troops on Christmas night before crossing the Delaware. Now just picture it, exhausted, freezing men hearing that line. It was more than encouragement. It was a challenge, a call to prove themselves in history. And they marched. They won at Trenton, and the revolution survived. But Paine didn't stop there. Whenever the cause faltered, whenever defeats piled up, he picked up his pen again. The American Crisis series carried soldiers through Valley Forge, reminded citizens why they sacrificed, and gave political leaders the justification to press on. If common sense lit the fuse, the American Crisis kept that fire burning. Now, after the revolution, Paine didn't stop. He went to France and wrote The Rights of Men. in support of the French Revolution. He argued that liberty was a universal right, not just an American one. And I think that's something probably that these countries in Europe need to go back and remember. But then came the Age of Reason, his sharp critique of organized religion, and that in deeply Christian America destroyed his reputation. Too many. Paine went from a hero of independence to a dangerous radical, even an atheist. Later, he returned to America in 1802 and wasn't welcomed as a voice of liberty. He was shunned, attacked in the press, denied the right to vote in his own community. And he died in 1809 in New York, largely alone. Only 6 people came to his funeral. For a man whose words once stirred a nation, his end was heartbreakingly quiet. That reminds me of Lindbergh as well, right? Lindbergh was the guy who flew across the Atlantic with no windows or anything. Was a huge supporter of Nazis. It's a real shame. Real shame. Maybe a story for another time. Maybe we'll talk about Lindbergh. I don't know. Anyway. But for Paine, history has a way of remembering the truth. Thomas Paine's words didn't die with him. Common Sense in the American Crisis remains some of the most powerful writings in American history. He gave America its confidence. He gave soldiers their courage. He gave the revolution a voice that couldn't be ignored. And then Thomas Paine, the failed corset maker, radical writer, and the man whose pamphlets fueled a revolution. His words carried more than muskets and more weight than armies. Common Sense gave Americans independence, and the American Crisis gave them the courage to see it through. Paine's pen proved that revolutions don't just need generals, they also need voices. And I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Remember, history isn't boring. It is the words strong enough to turn doubt into destiny. I'll see you next time.